Hello devs, Sid the IT guy here, and this is a video about Docker containers alongside a Laravel application. So as you can see, I have installed Ubuntu 20.04 and here I have the terminal open. So as we all know, Docker is an open platform for shipping applications. You can create your own Docker containers and you can decide the programming language you want to use, which kind of takes away from the platform dependencies. And Docker is highly portable, so it also removes the platform dependency problem that we have in software development. So the Docker container that I have created for you here, you can just run the command sudo docker compose up -t, and it will create 3 containers for you. It is quicker for me because I have already created these, but for you it may take some time. So you will have the container Redis, MySQL, and processor running. So if you just run sudo docker container ls, then it will list out all the containers that are currently running. So here we can see in the last column, we have the processor, MySQL, and Redis running. So in this video, I will take you through how I set up the whole thing. And the first step to doing that is installing Docker. So obviously you would have to go to install Docker Ubuntu. So you would have to install Docker Engine on Ubuntu, and you can use these commands and you can go through the whole installation method, and that would be it. And then you would have to cd into the Laravel project like this, and you would have to run docker compose up -t, the first command that you see here. So obviously I'm running Linux, so Docker is supported on Linux bare metal, but if you are using Windows, then you may have to use WSL, which is a Windows subsystem for Linux, and that's a whole other setup in on itself. Okay, so for MySQL and Redis, I'm using the standard installations for both of them. So if you check out the docker compose.yml file, which is at the root of the application, so here we have app bootstrap and everything. Docker services folder I'll discuss later, but the first file is the docker compose.yml. This is the file where you would have to cd into and run docker compose. So anyway, the version is 1, because obviously it will be 1. We have just started developing. So the image is processor 1, the container name would be processor. Restart is set to always. In case the container finds a problem or encounters a problem, it will restart itself. Then the environment is set up as node-env as dev, network mode as a host, depends on Redis and MySQL. This is where we just tell the container context that it will depend on these 2 containers to run properly. And in the build, we can just provide the context as docker services / processor, and we can provide the name of the Docker file. So, which is here, and I will discuss that. For the MySQL one, I'm using the MySQL Server 8.0, which is quite up to date. So 5.6 and 5.7 are reaching their EOL, end of life dates. So that's why I used the 8. And I have also put it as restart always, and the container name would be MySQL. The ports would be 3306. Yeah. And it will be on this volume, and the environment would be, the root password will be root, and the root host is a wildcard. For Redis, it is also standard installation. So the image is Redis, also restart always. The container name would be Redis. The volume is Redis data / data. And the port is 6379, which is kind of an accepted port for Redis. And in the volumes, we have MySQL data and Redis data. So here we have, yeah. So when we run Docker Compose up, then these are the 2 standard ones, and this is the one which is custom defined. So you will find this folder here called Docker services. So if you open that up, then you will have the processor folder in it, and inside it is a Node.js ExpressJS project. I'm sorry. So I just basically ran npm in it, and after that in the package.json, I included the Express framework, which is version 4.18. And after that, I run npm install, and I added these many packages because I thought it would be helpful in case we need it later. Yeah. So here we have the Docker file for the processor. The Node.js version would be 12. The work directory is Docker itself. And after installing, I just want to copy a package JSON, package log.json, or anything which is package star.json. So after that, I want to run npm ci only production, which is installation for the production environment. Then copy everything, the app source, then expose the port 8010. This is up to you to decide, and run this command, which is node server.js. So here we have the server.js, where the first line we define the express module to be required here. After that, we take the IO Redis here, and after that, the MySQL configuration is defined by this. Host is localhost, user root, password root, database is Shopify project, and the port is 3306. And Redis configuration is defined as host as localhost, and the port is 6379, as we saw in the Docker Compose file. So on warning, we are just console warning here, the stack trace, and that's it. So the node env is taken here. Sorry, yeah. So the node environment is taken here, and we can decide what configuration we're going to load in case we deploy it to a production environment. And here we have the definition of the server, which will keep running. So the app is defined as express, and the port is taken as 8010. It is defined in the Docker file. Then Redis is pinged. So here we have the Redis client variable as the new Redis of Redis config. After that, we are console logging that we are testing the connection, and we are calling the ping method here. And after that, a tick mark, and Redis client is null, because we don't want to keep the variable set like that, or otherwise it will print out these things, and that's it. So the same thing for database. So database is the source. In the src folder, I have defined a class called database.class.js, so that is required here. And the const db is defined as new database as mysql config, and the console log is like testing the mysql connection. We are calling the db.ping method, and this ping method is defined in database.class, which is here. So in this, we are just running this query, select one, and if it is, then return true. That's it. That's all that's happening here. And let's go back to server.js. Yeah, and the same thing here. If it doesn't fail, then it will print out the tick mark, otherwise the cross mark, and that's it. Now the function is send response, and the method, we'll look at that a little later. So here I have a get route, which is defined here as /ping /processor, and it will be of method.get. And here we have the request and response, and in this we are just returning response of 200 status, and it will have status okay and message in processor container. And here we have this condition where if the path is exactly equal to blank, then return a 200, otherwise return a 404 status. Then listen to the port which is defined, which is 8010, and just console log this part. So we can actually verify this if we run the command sudo docker logs processor, then we can see. Yeah, so the last ones are here. Never mind the above ones. These are, I think, cached. So anyway, so it is working fine. So after that, what we could do is, this method variable is defined like this. Whether if it is get, then the request method has to be get, otherwise return a 405. Same thing for post input, and that's it. And function send response, we are just returning the response with status and the JSON provided to it, and that's it. So now let's take a look at how I'm calling the Docker endpoint. So in web.php, at the last, you will see this test/docker route that I have defined. So this is an open route. We don't need authentication or authorization for this. So you can configure that out. So in home controller, you will see the test Docker function here. So here I have the get docker URL helper function, which is ping/processor, and the port number is 8010. Headers is get docker headers, and the response is make a Docker API call. So that is the endpoint, and the headers is passed into it, and we just return whatever we get. So you will see in request rate, I have this new function called make a Docker API call. So basically it is the same code as above, like this function, but I just kept it separate in case we need some customization on Docker endpoints. So here we have the same thing exactly, and let's close it out. So let's take a look at the functions get Docker URL and get Docker headers. So you will find that in helper.php. And here we have HTTP localhost, colon, port is appended, and then slash the path. And that's a simple string that is returned, and that's it. And in get Docker headers, a simple array with content type application JSON. Okay, so let's try this out. So if I go to my browser and test Docker, then here we have status goes 200, and in the body we have message status okay and messages in processor container as we defined here in the server.js. Yeah, status is okay and messages in processor container. So here we have an example of how we can use Docker containers in our app. They take away the programming language barrier, where if somebody on your team is efficient in Node.js, or if there's a process that you think will work better if you used an Express framework or an SJS framework, then you can just create a Docker container out of it and you can ship it to your other developers and they can just integrate it into the app seamlessly. And you can configure the app to use the same database as your main app and everything will be cool. So this is an example of how we can add a custom defined Docker container to our Laravel app, and also how we can add the standardized Dockers which are available for free. So in this case, this was MySQL and Redis. Okay guys, I'm going to wrap this video here. In the next video, I will show you some examples of how we can run queries in our Docker containers and we can return the response. So hit the subscribe button if you liked it, and let me know if there's anything that you have in doubt. I'll be happy to clear that out. Okay, thank you.